So thank you again for joining me on Enneagram and Start podcast. We know nothing about each other, so let's just try to get to know each other. Tell me a little bit about who you are, your life story, and how you came from, if I remember right, being a therapist to doing a podcast about the Enneagram.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. And I really enjoyed this strange trek, as you know, into podcasting life. It came a little bit before COVID, and I was starting to integrate the Enneagram into my coaching practice. And so I had moved from therapy into coaching so I could have a greater reach because therapy at the time was keeping me bound by my state. And it was also, as I moved from state to state, the rules and regulations changed. So I wanted a bit more freedom to live wherever I wanted to live, to serve clients wherever I wanted to serve, which served my type 7 part of me. And then I also, like we were just saying, found the Enneagram to be so helpful for my clients that I wanted to bring it out more broadly to others. And podcasting was the way to do it. So it was really nice to get started just before COVID, because when we got shut down, I still had an outlet to share, which felt safe.
I love that, because that actually kind of goes in kind of the same hand of why I do this podcast. It's called Enneagram Restored, and the idea is that the Enneagram helps bring restoration in your life. My biggest pet peeve when I first heard about the Enneagram was when I became a freshman here in college at Evangel University. And like people were talking about, it's like, I'm this, I'm that. They use it like, this defines me. I'm like, I don't really like that. So I hate it. And so to think I'm right where I am, like an avid Enneagram person now. I have like 8 books already. I got a whole Amazon list of books that I'm still trying to buy about the Enneagram. And then doing a podcast, and like I mentioned inside every conversation, I'm like, did you know the Enneagram can help you in this way? I think people want to slap me every time I bring it up, but
Right.
it's just like, it's been so helpful. And like, even still, I haven't reaped the full benefits myself of trying to rewire how I do life from knowing this basic personality of myself. So I just, like I said, your story just really matches up with, honestly, I don't think I really knew the full story behind that. So it's like, that was like fresh view of why you do your podcast. It's like, oh, wait a minute, that really goes to why I kind of started my podcast. I like that.
Love that. Awesome.
So I kind of want to have this written down a little bit different. I'm trying to think how I could phrase it differently. What is one thing that cannot be found out about you? One interesting thing that's not in your bio, or you really had to be like a close relationship with you to know about you, Christa?
Oh, wow. Oh, that is a tough question for a 7, because we are extroverted in the sense that we share everything almost.
Yes.
So like we might be an introvert because we like to recharge personally, but like when we're out there, we're like, I'm out here full barrels. But I try to say this sometimes to people. I don't think I say it in my writing as much. So unless you know me really well, you would not know that I have a real sensitive emotional side, because I come out very strong, and even my voice right now, there's a bit of harshness to it. And so it's like, there's a lot of softness, there's a lot of lament, and only the most close people to me will ever really get access to that side, if that makes sense.
Oh, yes. A little close to home right there for me too. It's like,
oh yeah,
eights aren't emotional people, period. And so, and then the home that I was raised in, we aren't, emotions were not like, you buried them and you dealt with life, type of thing. Now it's like, why was I ever put in that environment? It was so horrible.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to feel now, but I don't know how. So
that is true. That's like, hard.
Figuring out emotions now. I'm 22. I'm like, emotions, they kind of stick, they icky, but like, oh, at the same time, this feels good. But
they take so much vulnerability for both of us.
So it's like, that's the new thing. Like, I'm so like I become, I wouldn't say like I'm expressively emotional now, but like I'm
Yeah.
always thinking in the realm of emotions. How is this going to make me feel? I've even started to develop like some emotional things. I don't know if you read Brene Brown's book, The Atlas of the Heart.
I haven't read that one.
Great book. It's,
Okay.
uh, probably my favorite book at this point now.
Oh my
And so
gosh.
it really like was. I bought it thinking it was going to be like a step-by-step guide on how to do emotions,
Mhm.
and it is not that. And so it basically, the premise of the book is like we already know how to do emotions because it's built into us. It's just that 90% of the time we lack the vocabulary of emotions. You know, a lot of people, you ask them how you're doing, it's like, oh, I'm doing good, I'm happy, or I'm sad, or I'm mad. And like those are like the three main ones, but you never get into like stuff like anguish or like
Mhm.
despair. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
wait a minute. Like, yeah, I feel
Mhm.
these all the time. Like, but I've usually just used these three main category of words. So it's like, oh yeah. So like it's a very good
Mhm.
book. Like I
Mm.
had I had to
Wow.
force myself to put it down just to do other stuff. So
Wow. I'm so glad you told me that. I mean, man, is that cool. It's like the
oh,
feelings wheel, but in a way that is digestible in a book. So it's not just a feelings wheel. It's like, I see the words here, but like Brene Brown has such a way of drawing you out and
oh
making
yeah.
you feel safe. So thank you because I know that's what we both need.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's a really good
And if you don't
recommend.
have time to read right now,
Mhm.
that's good too, because she actually did like a mini series on HBO Max about this book, and she goes into details
Oh,
about some of the words. So I encourage you to check that
oh,
out too. So it's great. Like this book has made me a Brene Brown fan.
oh my
So
goodness. Oh, I'm so
I
happy
am.
to hear that.
So, but so we kind of talked about your journey to finding the Enneagram. You mentioned you're a 7. Um, I'm kind of wary to ask people their wings because
Mhm.
that's always something that's changing, and that's probably something I wouldn't say I hate about the Enneagram, but I find
Mm.
intriguing because you see, especially with the core type, it's like that doesn't change, but like your wing, your subtypes changes, and so it's like it's nice to see like
Yeah.
that's kind of contradictory to what we know basis of it, but like at the same time it works out so well because like
Mhm.
I realized just looking back, it's like, oh yeah, I can see growing up, I exhibited a lot of 8 energy, but like if there was majority of my life, I was taking on the energy of a 9 wing because like
Mhm.
peacekeeping, everybody, let's find common ground. But like now I'm in a space in life to where I don't really have to worry about peace. And so I've really been adventuring a lot, like going
Oh,
on hikes and like
oh,
just having
ooh,
fun. It's just like
love
it's
that.
a side of me I wish I would have had early on in life. I was like, this is just great. This is so
Oh,
much joy. So
oh, wow. Beautiful to hear that.
where kind of like in this moment of life do you find yourself more of a 6 wing or more of an 8 wing?
I think that I've come back toward the middle, but where I've been kind of noticing in my, you know, how you can see in your earlier life, here's when I was leaning really far into one or the other. Generally it's going to be a 6 for me, but there was a good space in my life where it was 8 in my 20s. And I just really enjoyed pushing through and doing everything I could. And until my early 30s really got me down on my butt when I had toddlers that were screaming 24/7, along with clients who were screaming 24/7. I was like, I need my 6 wing and I need it now. I need safety, protection, self care. And I really didn't come out of that until the last year or two. And it's been a slow go. So I'm coming back to balance. But sometimes I still slip in one direction or the other. So I really like how you said the goal is balance and it's to be as close to the middle as possible so we can gain the best of all the types, right?
Yeah. So that's
Yeah,
good.
I'm learning. Yeah.
And honestly, it's life is a learning process in altogether, but like I'm
Mm,
so like, gosh, my
mm,
gratitude towards the Enneagram is like ever increasing because like without this, I don't know, like,
yeah.
oh my goodness, how I would learn life lessons. Like it it seemed like, for me at least, before discovering the Enneagram, life lessons were like a kick in the butt, but now it's like a gentle push of learning
Yeah.
life lessons.
Ooh, I like
So
that.
it's like,
Yeah.
it just makes it so much easier. Like,
Yeah.
so it's been a great tool. Um,
Awesome. Love
Now I'm gonna kind of throw a curveball at you right now, because this wasn't in one of the list. Was not one of the questions in the list that I sent you.
that.
But it's kind of a selfish question, about something that was said in the episode you just did with Dana and Johnny Lawson, which was a great episode, by the way.
Yeah.
But he mentioned something about being productive in your single season. And I agree with that. But there's at least for me, there has been this flaw where I've realized that my productiveness has only been towards one area of life, and it's been to like the success area of life, because I've been doing things like starting on my own businesses, a podcast, becoming president of my dorm room, and being a chairman of a committee. And it's like all success here, productivity. And it's like,
Yeah.
do you think that, so this is kind of, let me back up a little bit. This question is a little bit three-part question. So the first part would be, do you think there's like a balance, that there should be like a certain percentage spiritual, a certain percentage success, a certain percentage relationships? What's your idea on that part of it?
Oh, that's a great question. And I'm so grateful that you got to learn from him in your season of being young and doing so much. So that makes me really happy. But I also want to say that I think that the spiritual for me comes in at the end when I've kind of exhausted the first few resources, because I do like to take time in my faith life every night before bed. But then I usually do my day, and I start out in gratitudes with a brief time of spirituality as well. So it's not that it isn't in and through all the other things. But what I really want to say about that is, as I'm trying to get that mind, body, heart balance, and this is what I recommend for anyone who's single, is try to be like, every single day I do something to enrich my mind. Every single day I do something to enrich my emotions, which you're clearly doing. And then also your body. And that could be drinking water, as you know, or it could be lifting weights, but something in your body. And then when all of those still, sometimes you're still lamenting or you're still frustrated, that's when I would say go to God, because your spiritual life comes in right there, instead of you going to your vice, which is what really kind of tempts us in that moment. And so whatever your Enneagram vice is kind of comes in and says, I'll take care of you. All of this wasn't enough. Especially in our cases as a 7 and 8, because we want more and more and more.
Yeah.
But for somebody else, it might be pull back, pull in, pull away. And for us, it's push in, push in. And so it's really nice right there to actually surrender to God, take deep breaths, and just say, you know what, like this is going to happen in your timing and not mine. So for a single person, that's great, because then you don't push the person away that you're trying to pursue, or multiple options away if you're single and they're just kind of seeing you in your life flailing. And they're like, man, I'm noticing that that person doesn't know how to rest. They don't know how to just be still. So I hope that helps a little bit. And I know it's a 3-part question, but
Dude, you're cutting me like a knife right now. Well, one, I've been a Christian my entire life. Of course, that doesn't mean I haven't like fallen.
Yeah.
You know, I've really. That's a whole different podcast story right there about my relationship with Christ. But like,
yeah,
the surrendering part
yeah,
is so hard, especially for someone like me. It's like I've
yeah,
gotta have everything in control, everything planned out, and it's like, oh gosh, especially relationships. Like,
yeah,
it's like I want to surrender. I can't talk. Surrender that, but it's like, gosh, I could do, like, why not have this option and this option and this option instead of just giving it all up? You know, it's like I can see much more clear. So it's like I'm really working on that. It's like I've got to surrender. I've got to surrender. It's like I know, like, gosh. So I've been kind of. It's not a, like I said, it's not easy
No,
at
it
all.
isn't.
So
No, it's really hard. I commend you for trying to do that because it's beautiful to see. Even I can tell you're sincerely wanting that and you're sincerely admitting sometimes you don't do it. But we both know that when we do, we feel better. Like
oh yeah.
now you're clear. Now you're like, I don't need somebody else to define me. I'm fine. But it's like that whole, oh my gosh, it's scary to let go of that control.
Yeah. And then the rest part you said right there is like, gosh,
Mm.
that
Mm.
like I said, cutting me like a knife because I do not do rest well. I'm always on the go.
Yeah.
Either whether it's most of the time it's just doing worship at church because I sing at I do worship on at church, which is a mega church, and so it's like honestly, I don't really take breaks off of serving unless it's like a break where I'm going home for a long time per se, like Christmas break. It's like, but other than that, I've been on team for 2.5 years now, and like every Sunday, every Wednesday, I'm serving. So like rest, I don't do.
Yes.
And
Oh my
even then, like going everywhere else, it's like
gosh.
my friends complain, like I never hang out with them. Like I'm always busy.
Yeah, you're like, this is my way of doing life. And you do have a lot of energy as an 8-wing 7. It's arguably the most energetic of all the types, even though it does not mean, which people are misinformed sometimes, that that person doesn't ever get exhausted or burn out. They do. But you're just saying you generally will rest a little bit and get back up again. And you're aware that that's kind of just your only way of doing life. And I get that. And sometimes
Yeah.
it does take moments where we fall flat on our faces before we find out, and not just one time, but many times. So I'm right there with you,
Oh
but
yeah.
at least learning it. And sometimes, like you said, being a Christian, God has been quite gentle overall with teaching me the lessons. But they are there for us to
Oh yeah.
learn when we'll see them and slow down.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's just ooh, you said those things. I'm like, wow, is God sitting right there telling these things about me? Like, how does she know? This is me to a T.
That's
Surrender
awesome.
and resting are work in progress.
Yes. Amen.
People, in passing, people will be like, "How you doing?" I'm like, "I'm alive."
Yeah.
That's about all I could say. I'm like, I don't know anything past that, but
Right, right. Oh my God.
anyway,
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
back to the question here a
Mhm.
little bit. So do you think it's possible to kind of, after you've kind of taken the introspective look into yourself and you worked on yourself and you've been to God, do you think it's possible to actually kind of gauge or put a timeline on that coming out of waiting and going into that season of actually seeing reality of a dating relationship happening?
Hmm. I do, because dating takes time and intention. So if you're somebody who's busy, or maybe you're a listener who's withdrawing and you like a lot of personal time, however it looks for you, carving out at least 6 to 10 hours a week for quality time with the person you're pursuing is important, because it takes specific time to be able to get to know them in those dating years. So it's not worthwhile if you say, I really ideally want to mate, but I'm not willing to give it any time. Then I would say you're not there yet, and that's okay. But if you've got some time, you've got some good balance in your life, and you've got some good plans going where you're like, I have a direction, I'm on the path, and I'm intent to get there for my years of professionalism, and I'm not just aimless, then I think that that's an okay time to date, because you really are getting your life together, and you don't have to wait as long as Johnny on my podcast did, 33 years, but you also do want to wait as long as it takes you to get there.
Oh, I love that. It's because especially as a Christian, we hear a lot in the church. Oh, just wait until God provides. He's going to bring you somebody. And
Yeah.
I've always hated that.
Yeah.
When people say, I'm like, of course God is going to provide somebody, but it's like, maybe it won't be, maybe it's up to me at this point.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, you can take some healthy steps too. And if
Yeah.
God closes a door, that's important to pay attention to. That's really important to pay attention to, because I know 7s and 8s and 3s we can barrel through.
Totally.
So sometimes when God does close a door, it doesn't mean that later there can't be redemption. If you kept pushing and you never listened, trust me, anyone who's been married 10 years or more is going to have days like that where they're like, was I really listening? But then he's really good to us. Like
Oh, yeah.
there's redemption.
He has to close the door and then slam it in my face again a couple of times for me to get to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, me too, for sure. And
So,
then, but yeah, he sometimes grows those people in our life that we lament to, and we're like, okay, you know what? They're maturing too. So this is all good, even though maybe God did tell me no, but I didn't listen. So
yeah.
we have to give people the grace to change along with us.
One thing, and you can say if you agree or disagree with this, but one thing that I've kind of been contemplating lately is this idea when you say God closing the door with one person, is that maybe along the way, which I know for sure along the way, as you find somebody to date, there's going to be people that you've developed feelings for, and it won't work out. It's happened to me for the past 3 years at least. Constantly, it's like, but it's this idea of being okay that they were just there for a season. Because sometimes you think, you see somebody. For me, at least, there was this one girl that I thought, all right, she's the one, and like it never even went on a first date because it happened right before COVID and like everything there. And it's like, oh wow, so maybe like I'm coming to terms like maybe she wasn't the one, but like honestly, it was that girl that kind of being interested in her pursued me towards these new interest and emotions per se, and trying to become more emotionally developed. So it's like maybe the purpose wasn't to actually date her, but to just say, all right, I'm lacking in this area. So again, just kind of recognizing kind of what each person you come in contact helps you to see about yourself is a great thing. And honestly, not having the Enneagram, I probably would never seen that lesson in life. I would have been like, no, for sure, she was the one. That no other reason. Like,
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, back to the angsting,
Oh yeah. So, before I dive into a little bit more of the serious questions, let's kind of talk about the Enneagram and Marriage Collective, which I kind of feel like a little ashamed because, like,
oh my God.
I don't know if maybe I feel like I could have stolen this idea from you, but like I don't remember listening to your podcast in a while. But then one day I was like, I'm gonna start a collective about Enneagram and emotions. But then like the next day or so, I was listening to your podcast. Like I heard you talk about the Enneagram and Marriage Collective. I'm like, did I just steal her idea? Like, hopefully not.
No, it's totally fine because you know what? It's all a collective. Like we're all social. So it's just a word, but I love that you asked about it. And I love that you're thinking about this on a bigger level with emotions. That's really important. So yeah, but we're really excited to have couples or individuals come together to learn about relationships and a little bit of a more focused togetherness quality, because on a podcast, it's me speaking to the world without any kind of feedback.
Yeah.
Of course, I get it from clients and my family, but it's really nice already. We've had just one meeting together to hear what are the needs out there. And you can do quizzes and surveys, but when you really spend time together, it's a monthly meeting where we spend 2 hours together on a topic. And then there's question and answer and time to really just be together, breathe together. There may be some lament as we go on and people feel safe, definitely training. And then we have an intent for the month where we focus in on a tool or two. And then we can come back the next month and do it all over again. And then we also have a little space inside of my website so that people can get some videos on how to grow in their relationship together with some PDFs there. And then they also get a special extra podcast each week to give them extra encouragement. So it's just different ways to give them a deeper dive into training.
Yeah. And if I remember right, the founders, they just closed today.
Yes. It was 19 a month. And now it's 29 a month. So I'm really grateful to have some people in that founders space just to give us a sense of let's see what the need is.
Oh
Let's,
yeah.
do that. And then we're going to stay open for another couple weeks for those who are still catching on. And then I don't know if you'll do this for your collective, but for me, it's nice to grow with some closed doors. People like the scarcity. They need to know that offers aren't eternal sometimes.
Oh yeah.
But you don't do it because you don't want people to learn. You do it so you can focus and really connect. And then I'm hoping what will happen is we'll open again in the fall.
Yeah. For me, like I said, mine is still in development. I just thought about it. So I'm still working out the kinks and things and how it will work. But like for me, I know at least for this first collective group, I wanted to limit to 25 people. So what do you have a limit of people that you are, or what does that look like for your collective?
No, I didn't, but I think it was about 27 couples and they can sign up together. So it's all under the one.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking about that this morning, that there's a part of me that's afraid to move on too much bigger, because I feel like you need to start with a certain amount that makes you feel, especially as a thinking type, safe, so that you can actually grow community. It's not that you can't do that with a big one, as going to a mega church, but it's a starting small, because that's the capacity I have. And I don't want to grow too big before I'm ready to meet that. I just trained up all these coaches to work with me. So in fact, we had so many coaches in addition to those 27 people that I thought, okay, good. There's plenty of us to help if need be. Because what if each one of them needed a ton of help? So I knew I had good staff, and by staff, I don't mean that you would in your collective necessarily have to have people working for you, but just people that, are going to be helpers. Because when you open up the doors to supporting others, you need to be able to manage it well, really well. And so now I finally feel like that. And I probably would have just hired more people. If it would have gotten to crazy numbers, I would have said, okay, well, I actually need to hire more than just these few. But it turned out that we have a really nice balance where there's plenty of people to help out, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Which I like the attention to keeping it small, because, even if you do hire more people to do, like, even if it got bigger and you hired more people and there was like breakout sessions and everything like that, honestly, that goes more towards the realm of like a webinar setting than it is like our discussion. And so it's like the bigger, it's just kind of hard. It's possible, but like you said, it's hard to have an actual discussion with a bigger group. And so keeping stuff like this small is like, I'm all for big, but when it comes to like diving deep into emotions and like marriages and fixing ourselves, it's like, let's keep it small, let's keep it not too small, not too big, but as Goldilocks said, just right.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I love that. Yes, that's a great reminder. And you are leaning on your 7, because you're like, let's find the best about each. And that's what I think is wise, is like whatever God gives you, you do your best with it. So if he gives you something where you end up having this huge, large group, you'll be like, okay, we're going to do some breakouts. And I'm already thinking that way too. But what's nice is I can just barely manage to kind of try to love on everybody, even without a breakout, if I want to right now. So like you said, there's good to both, but it is going to always be a journey, and we're always going to be learning, and nothing's ever perfect.
You keep on saying these words, that some of my favorite words.
Oh, good.
Journey, intention, like 2 words I love the most. Like I refer to everything as a journey. I'm on a emotional journey, I'm on a restoration journey. Like, if it's fixing me, I'm gonna say journey. It's like it's not fixing, it's a journy.
I love it.
Because on journeys you have challenges. I always think of, when I say that word, I think of like a would it be like a 90s video game where like you have one main quest, but like in between you have these smaller quests and everything. I'm like, that is life.
Yes,
that is
100.
life to a T.
So. Oh yeah, I loved my 90s video games. So I'm with you. That's a great analogy for me as a 7.
So all this stuff is just coming out of me like right now. So but now let's deeper questions here. What comes to mind when you hear the word restoration? How would you kind of like define that to somebody?
I would say more wholeness. It just really reminds me of broken pieces being put back together in a way that reveals that there's been some damage somewhere, but that there's also been growth, and maybe even, of course, being an idealist, I would say maybe even growth that is greater than they ever had before they had ever been broken. Because when we're broken, we know how to help others who have been broken. So I like that about restoration, that not only do we get to heal the broken pieces of ourselves, but we get to be an example of others to others who need that as well.
Oh, I love that. Uh, I think of restoration and reconnection like on a spectrum. Um, it goes back to another analogy. I think a lot in analogies for some strange reason. But when you think of like Fixer Upper or Restoration Road with Clint Harp, I don't know if you've heard that show, but like um, all these house shows are fixing things up. You have dilapidated houses that have been just sitting there for ages and they're restored, but not all of it is fully restored to something new. There might be like a fireplace that, doesn't look the greatest, but they reconnect it to its original intent of use. Like the original owner intended it to be like this beautiful fireplace you can gather by, but then as time went on, you know, fireplaces became unfamous to use for gathering, just more of like a pretty little thing you have in your house. And so when you restore this dilapidated house, you have this entire restoration, but then you have this one piece that doesn't really need restoring. It just needs to be reconnected to its original use.
Oh,
So,
wow. Ooh, that's a great analogy.
so, um,
I love
yeah,
that.
I'm always, aside from podcasting too, I'm interior designer. I just started my own firm a couple of months ago. So it's like everything I do is in the realm of Enneagram, emotions, and houses right now. So
Oh,
I'm
that's
always
fun.
thinking. So,
Wow, that's a cool
but
field.
um, and to think of it, it's like how am I doing all this stuff? Because I'm at school majoring in church leadership. So like none of this really connects, but like I'm doing it and having fun. So
Yes, it will connect throughout different
oh
moments of
yeah.
your life too.
So that's just a little tangent. But glow guides. I've kind of, I mean, honestly, I like the idea of them. So, but I listen to your podcast. I don't know if I've fully grasped what they are. So, could you just like briefly explain that a little bit? What glow guides are?
Sure. So I created booklets, and they're just PDFs that you can download from my website on each of the 45 pairings. And my friend who's an artist, she drew pictures to go with each one to illustrate for the visual types among us. And it was a fun process to really walk through together as two thinking types to really dissect what each pairing was like. And of course, with a lot of great surveys and client experiences, I got to see a lot of the pairings in multiple different dimensions. So, as much as we can't nuance exactly like what each of us is like, because we're not fully cookie cutters, but we're all creatives, it does give some very specific advice for people of each pairing with their partners. So if you're an Enneagram 1 and you are dating a 3, or if you're a 6 dating a 9, whatever the combo, we have a booklet for that to help you to process the issues that you're likely to do well in and the ways you're likely to glow or shine out in the world, as well as when the shadows come in, what it's likely to look like when you're a little bit stressed, burnt out. And then we also have date night tips and tips for you when you're serving in the world together too. And just that way you have a roadmap as well as some questions at the end to ask each other, like, how are we vibing together? So it's a nice, I want to say beginner's tool, but to be quite honest, it's something that even though my husband and I know the material in it now, I think that what would be a shame is if we just read it informationally, but we didn't
Yeah,
take time with the Q&A, if that makes sense.
yeah. And so you kind of answered my next question. So I'm gonna think of a new question real quick.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Your time.
it's good to know, it helps shows issues that might come up between two pairings, um, and then also the good areas. But like, do they kind of show examples of like when two people are kind of like in a neutral space of life, the relationship isn't going bad, but it also isn't like the greatest it could be. It's just like in that gray area. Does that glow guys to that too?
Yes, I think that we try to tackle that when we talk about how it can get just a little bit bad, because for some couples, they really will never be just like meh. They'll be like, we are passionate until we're done, even if it's for better or for worse.
Yeah.
Whereas others really will be, like you said, maybe boring, doldrums. And so we try to really focus in on what will happen for each iteration of the pairs. Um, for instance, an 8 and a 3, there's a lot of fire there because they're two aggressive, assertive types. So there isn't going to be as much stagnancy as, say, two withdrawing types, 9 and 5, who are much more likely to retreat into quiet corners.
Yeah.
So I think we tried to address that. But I also like your question because it's inferencing seasons of relationships and how, as a general rule, all relationships do have seasons of doldrums and need to spark up and bring adventures into their lives together. It's a
Yeah.
good question.
So, um, and then we've kind of touched base on this a little bit, but is there any advice that you would give to the different seasons of relationships, dating, engaged, married, or single? If you wanted to just tackle a few, or maybe even all of those areas, I'm handing it off to
Yeah.
you.
Sure. Okay. Well, the single years, I think we were really I think we were really right on when we said make sure that you are doing your single life with intention and direction so that you have a space where you're moving towards and not just being aimless, like, hey, I'm living, I'm just enjoying life to the full. Like, that is a nice thing to do when it's break time, to say, look, I've got 3 hours to kill, or I've got a vacation to plan, or it's time for a weekend getaway. Like, that's a great space and time to really just be chill. But I think that each day is a gift. So if you can get those three areas, physical, and and then mental rest each day, that's good. And for different people, rest looks different. It could literally mean for an 8 doing something, whereas for a 5 it may mean retreating. So that can be helpful for you as you're learning, what does rest really look like for me? Let me really, really reflect on that. And then also spiritually, I would really say surrendering to God. And I would carry that forward into all the next seasons. It's just a foundational season in the single years. And then in dating, I would say add in that you are specifically asking questions that will help you to know if this is a person who can really blend well with you in life. If they're going in such a different direction that you talked about, or thought about in your single years, then it's really important that you really discuss that. Like, what would that look like for us if we're going in such different directions? And that way you can determine whether it's best to continue walking together, or if, like you said, it's just a season where you were teaching each other something, or maybe just a friendship. So, but also I would add to that, I hope that there's some chemistry and some laughter and some natural love too. In the dating years, I hate for it to be, for any of our listeners, just kind of really, really tough and difficult from that point. I think that it's nice to be able to say, these are supposed to be the honeymoon years. So let's try to make sure that we do have some joy, because marriage is supposed to be a place where we do have some fun times together. And then as we move to engagement, I think it's okay there to then say, all right, let's dig in. We are engaged. We love each other. We love spending time together in general, but we know things have come up here and there. And let's talk about how we can really dig in and learn about conflict styles. Let's do our, as you said, our Enneagram work. And then lastly, I think that just continues on in marriage, where you say, like, now we have hopefully a bit of an afterglow where we've come together, we know how we shine, and we can now continue to walk through these stages together. And I have them all in stages inside of my membership where people can really like continue to walk through the stages. But basically, it goes from that basic of let's build up, let's get our 6 to 10 hours a week together every single week. And let's carry that out where we have fun every week, rest every week, self-care, goals. And now we have that afterglow where we're serving in the world, but also replenishing. So you just never get too bored if you're doing that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally. I love it. It again, one of my favorite words it all comes back to is intention. You just can't let things happen by happenstance. If you really wanted something to be fruitful, you got to have intention. And it's kind of, I swear God is working in this entire episode, because last night a preacher preached on how God prunes people to make them more fruitful. And then like, here we are talking about, intention and being more fruitful. And it's just like, okay, maybe this podcast is more about me than it is for the, just publishing it. But
true. Sometimes it's like that when I do things too. You're right. It may be just like God really speaking into you specifically. I love that.
So, well, is there anything that we have not talked about that you would like to talk about right now?
Well, I just love that you encouraged the listeners to, through our chats, we're both saying really going to God and living a life of balance is a beautiful space. So I just want everybody listening to know that that's not going to disappoint them. That's going to bless them and be a fruitful space. It doesn't mean life will be perfect, but it gives you some groundedness through the crazy times. It really does. So I'm just thankful that you're listening and that anyone else listening can to glean that, because I wish somebody would have taught me that when I was at your age, and now I'm in my 40s. I'm like, oh, I'm learning this, but it would have been really cool to know that at that season.
I wish somebody would tell me to way before then. Like, you think that would have been helpful information? Somebody one day's got to write a book just saying, all right, here's how you do life. Whoever makes that book will make a whole lot of money, I promise.
Yeah. Balance for kids. We have to like make sure we get all the way down to the kid years, right? Because that's where we all kind of go wrong. So I try to teach that to my babies. I'm sure you're trying to teach that to the little ones, but if any of you like listening, teach Sunday school or, keep pouring this into the kids too, because they're paying attention.
Oh yeah. Kids probably pay more attention than anybody else in this world.
I know, they're so precious.
So, but well, that's all that I have. Tell us where we can find you on Instagram and Facebook, your socials and your website, so people can know how to get in contact with you and see more about what you're doing.
Thank you. Well, we can really always enjoy having you come to enneagramandmarriage.com, the website. I have a lot of freebies there and a lot of blogs so that you can really find that glow together. Or if you're an individual, just find some self-care there. And then I also have podcasts that you can find on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen by the name Enneagram and Marriage. And it's the same title on Instagram. And then last but not least, I was going to also say, we have a Facebook group that's just regular and free too, where my executive assistant, Coach Jen, is in several times a week. And she's like, hey, here's our new podcast. If we're running a contest, she tells you about it. She'll tell you about our membership group. So those are lots of different pockets that anybody can visit anytime.
I love it. Well, again, thank you for talking with me today. It's been a pleasure. And definitely, I'm going to have to come up with something else to talk to you about, because I'm going to have to get another one on schedule soon. So, I had a fun time.
Me too. Thank you, Braylon. You're awesome. I love to hear all you're doing in the world.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you guys for listening. And thank you for being here.